Hello, my name is Mike McGowan, and welcome to my redesign of professional development. This presentation is part of an online blended learning course facilitated by Dr. Vaughn. In my experience, professional development has been directed by the administration of a school and married to the school development plan, which was established with minimal input from the teaching staff themselves. Professional development was delivered in intensive direct ways, little collaboration or discussion, and no follow-up with regards to the effectiveness of the model. As I remember from my teaching days, professional development was something that was done to me and not with me, and it was easily dismissed because of the lack of accountability and or follow-up. Instead, we have to look at who our 21st century learners are. No longer is it acceptable to expect learners, adult or student, to sit and receive information that is easily obtained with one simple click. Disengagement and motivation are the catalyst for change in the learning environment of today's education system. 21st century learners are not passive, but instead active in the pursuit of learning. The disconnect between traditional professional development models and the need to provide authentic collaborative learning experiences congruent with the development of critical and creative thinkers is a cultural shift and redesign that professional development requires to educate the adult or teacher learners of today. As the assistant principal, one of my portfolios is teacher learning and staff professional development. After an examination of the previous year's data gathered from professional conversations and staff surveys, it was evident that our staff had perceived themselves as having a limited role in the development of the school direction, and they desired more control over their professional learning. As a district, the Calgary Board of Education is focused on solving complex problems, as guided by the work of Vivian Robinson, and our administrative goal this year was to develop a common rationale, understanding, and ownership for the school development plan amongst all staff members to improve buy-in and implementation. Vivian Robinson identified in her 2015 keynote address to all administration of the Calgary Board of Education that a problem is defined as a set of solution requirements plus the demand that the problem be solved. Our staff collectively examined survey data from parents, students, and staff, used standardized assessment results, and engaged in professional conversation to identify a common complex problem. It was clear to everyone that engagement in task design was the complex problem. The focus of my redesign project will be to establish a blended community of inquiry that supports the design, implementation, and assessment of passion projects and their effect on student achievement. I will design a professional development course environment that encourages and expands the face-to-face community of learning that has already been established, and provide the resources and opportunities to extend the community of this beyond our school through personalized synchronous and asynchronous online opportunities. As part of its 3-year education plan and commitment to personalizing learning, the Calgary Board of Education uses the instructional core as its guiding framework. The instructional core represents the dynamic relationship between the teacher, the student, and content, and at the center of the instructional core is the process of instructional design. The instructional core requires teachers to understand themselves and the learners in order to be responsive and flexible in their instructional approach, and ultimately to have teachers and students be co-constructors of learning as they are influenced by one another and by the content. The personalization of learning and task design that focuses on the educational experience is further developed within the community of inquiry framework. COI brings together the social, cognitive, and teaching presence to form at its center a collaborative, constructivist educational experience. It is at the core that authentic and personally meaningful tasks are explored and worthy educational outcomes are reached. Not unlike the instructional core, the premise of the COI framework is that both a collaborative and an individually constructivist learning experience can be reached, as it is the reciprocal relationship of the teacher and student found at the heart of the instructional core. The COI framework guides a new way of conceiving and offering professional development that can directly impact the instructional core by improving instructional task design and ultimately impacting student motivation and engagement. The COI framework can be used in my context to encourage all participants of the community to assume greater responsibility and control of their educational experience and professional development. My professional development redesign will utilize the COI framework to capture face-to-face opportunities and online learning to create a blended approach where teachers listen to one another with respect, build on one another's ideas, challenge one another to supply reasons for otherwise unsupported opinions, assist each other in drawing inferences from what has been said, and seek to identify on another's assumptions. Although there are few rules in a redesign, there are three key guidelines as described by Garrison and Vaughan. And the first key guideline is to revamp the course and start new. For staff to change their mindset around professional development, it must look and feel different. We must start by asking the key question of the planning framework. What do we want our staff to know when they have completed our professional development? Professional development for our staff must be reflective of the practices, goals, and solution requirements of our complex problem. Through participation in a hybrid or blended learning experience, staff will understand and develop new teaching opportunities that incorporate new types of interactive and independent learning activities that utilize both a face-to-face and online teaching learning environment. Through the blended learning PD, staff will develop the higher order skills of critical thinking, problem solving, and the ability to apply the blended theoretical model to their own educational context to increase student engagement and learning. Lastly, staff will become engaged, motivated, and be more connected in their own professional development by increasing their connectivity to the COI of their professional learning network, teaching teams, and school staff. Upon completion of this year's PD, staff will understand that a blended learning community provides the learner control of time, place, path, and/or pace of their personal learning. The second guideline, as described by Garrison and Vaughan, is to manage the volume of content. More time needs to be spent learning the theory behind the practice or simply learning the why behind the decision. My redesign will begin by focusing on the blended learning taxonomy of Staker and Horn. Just as any individual teacher must understand and assess the diversity of their classroom, the administration must also understand the diverse needs and abilities of its staff in order to successfully implement a new learning model. Based on my staff's needs, I believe the rotation model, and more specifically the station rotation model, allows all individuals of varying technological and pedagogical experience an entry point into the course. The first station of the model is the direct teacher-led instruction that is facilitated by the administration and is the part of the redesign my school has already begun. During the first station, key data and school information was shared and examined by staff. It was at this time that the goals of student engagement and authentic task design became evident. Immediately, the cognitive presence of the COI had been established as teachers began to investigate, define, and identify key questions with regards to student motivation and engagement. The second station of the rotation model is where teachers began to collaboratively identify the strengths and weaknesses of the learning opportunities within our school. Staff immediately established a strong social presence that formed the foundation for cohesive and trustful conversations throughout our redesign. As with any learning theory or model, the needs of the learner require it to be flexible and dynamic, and the station rotation model employed by my staff needed to remain fluid rather than rigid. During the first few months of our redesign, we stayed in the direct instruction and collaboration stations. Research and professional articles on blended learning were shared, school development plans were created, and staff revisited Calgary Board of Education direction surrounding the personalization of learning and the instructional core. The collaborative station allowed staff to discuss, share thoughts and opinions, and to establish a common belief and understanding of the solution requirements. It is my belief that the teaching presence of the COI gained its foothold at this point because every member of the community of practice had a strong understanding of the learning theory, goals, and direction the school was taking with regards to task design that motivated and engaged learners. Online instruction is the third station of the rotation model, and it is the most unfamiliar and challenging for my staff. It was designed by administration that this station would play a minimal role in the redesign process initially. By simply posting documents and hosting very minimal discussions online, staff were exposed to the online environment, but were not overwhelmed by the experience. Reducing the stress reduced the resentment, which in turn began to encourage further exploration of the online classroom or third station of the rotation model. The third guideline is to support the understanding of why we are redesigning not only PD, but also the learning practices within the school. A key component of the redesign is to firmly establish a community of inquiry. Thus far, redesign has described what has been done already to form and support the foundation of a strong community of inquiry. But the next task of firmly establishing the COI is the true challenge of my redesign. To truly establish the COI, all teaching staff and not simply administration must have a teaching presence within the COI to design, facilitate, and direct the professional development. Moving forward, the rotational model that formed the foundation of the COI will continue, with greater emphasis being placed on the online and collaborative components of the rotation. Rather than leading direct instruction, administration will facilitate learning, collaboration, and the design of professional learning networks through the implementation of Google Docs and the previously used learning management system of D2L. The learning management system of D2L will be used to establish a strong cognitive presence by creating a repository of professional articles, web links, and other professional resources that can be easily accessed and contributed to by staff members. The social and teaching presence of the COI will be increased as grade teams will be invited to moderate a monthly discussion that shares how they are impacting student engagement through their professional practice, sharing of professional resources, and connecting experts with the rest of the school. The strong collaborative nature of Google Docs will be introduced to staff to support their work in the collaborative station. Grade teams will use Google Docs to plan their lessons or passion projects, allowing the professional learning community to ask questions, make suggestions, and comments based on the plan provided. Google Docs allows for the social, cognitive, and teaching presence of the COI to be housed in one spot as teachers move through the adjustment cycle to ensure that their lessons are motivating and engaging for their learners. The proposed redesign of this paper focuses in the beginning on understanding the why, and through that process, the how becomes clear and purposeful. Sharon Friesen describes this in her blog as the know why and the know how of design-based learning. The know why focuses on professional learning that is guided by scholarly research, school-based data, and evidence. The know why is where solutions to complex problems of practice are conceptualized and then implemented and studied. The know how is the implementation of the practical practice that has been grown out of the know why theory. This is the essence of the professional learning community, where teachers design worthwhile tasks and assessments, bring forward evidence of student learning to analyze, and to determine the next steps for both student learning and teaching. As well, teachers extend their learning circle to include researchers and mentors found in their professional learning networks to bring new innovation and insight into the school practice. The ultimate evaluation of the redesign project will be to look at the data. The easiest measure will be to compare next year's survey data with the assessment data that was used to guide the redesign. The data will provide hard evidence-based numbers that can be used to justify or substantiate the know-how of the redesign. But it will be the anecdotal evidence and sustainability of the know-why that will be most important. Examining D2L and Google Docs should reveal increased collaboration with colleagues, more evidence of scholarly mentors and research being used to guide questions and implementation, evidence that grade teams and teachers are moderating discussion forums and leading face-to-face learning opportunities, and lastly, bringing together the social, cognitive, and teaching presence of the collective learning network to redesign professional development so that it has the greatest impact on student achievement, and this will form a culture of professional learning. To sustain the relevance of the professional development redesign, a strong balance between working individually and collectively, both online and face-to-face, will need to be established. Encouraging individuals to extend their learning network beyond the school will be important, but it will be the responsibility of the administration to facilitate opportunities for individuals to share with the collective. We want our students to be motivated and engaged in what they are learning, to go out and study their passions. The same holds true for our staff. We want them to engage in their own professional passions. Individually, we want our staff to reach out to the professional community through blogs, websites, Twitter, or other professional forums. Not only is this informative and practice changing, but it also encourages teachers to question, analyze, and synthesize key information and connect it back to the collective goals of the redesign. Relevancy and worth are two key components of sustainability. With administration changes and staff turnover, sustainability is a real issue and potentially a deadly disease to the community of inquiry. By encouraging individuals to pursue their passions while connecting their learning with the agreed upon goals of the school development plan, you are ensuring a professional development redesign that has stickiness. The pinnacle of the redesign will be reached as the know why and the know how converge to establish blended learning contexts in the classroom that are examples of effective and efficient ways to learn. Students will be engaged in meaningful tasks that are worthy of their time. Student achievement will increase as teacher professional experiences center on the work of the classroom through shared resources, expertise, reflection, and pedagogical approaches that are supported through a strong collegial network. As John Hattie states, the greatest effect on student learning occurs when teachers become learners of their own teaching and when students become their own teachers. A redesign of professional development that is based on a functioning COI framework and which utilizes a blended approach is in fact the innovation and pedagogical design required to address the real challenges of engagement and access in education.